Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. In this episode, we talk to Chris Hay, who's a technical architect at Sliced Bread, where, in his words, he spends the day smashing out code. Chris also volunteers some of his spare time for Code Club Northwest, which is all about teaching kids how to code. He's also one of the organisers for the Dev Bakery user group, and he's fanatical about motorsports, Marvel and Star Wars, and according to his Twitter, he's an ex-twirler. So welcome to The Cynical Developer, Chris.
Thanks, James. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to get you on. Now, straight off the bat, what is a twirler?
Yeah, it's a reference to when I used to play cricket until about 3 or 4 years ago. So when I was a youth, I used to be all fast and pacey and sling it in with my left arm at what I thought was quite fast. And then when I took a break and came back as an older man, in my early 30s, it turned out I can't sling it, and I'm now a spinner. So I can't really spin it. So all my teammates just said, you just take a couple of paces and twirl your arms around, hence the twirler.
Fair enough. Because I looked at that and I just thought, is he marching at the front of a band with a stick? Because I'm sure they're called a twirler as well, a baton twirler.
Yeah, that's not quite my thing.
No, I didn't think it was, but yeah. Okay, cricket reference, fair enough. That's a lot better than what I thought it was. So we're going to talk today about Octopus Deploy. Now, we're going to get straight in with what is Octopus Deploy.
Okay, so it's a deployment and release management tool, really. So it itself installs on like a centralized server, a Windows server, and then it uses Windows services installed on other servers where you're going to deploy your code to deploy that, and they're called tentacles. So they communicate directly with the main centralized server and deploy your applications through basically a form of SSL tunnel. So there's some certificate handshaking involved and things like that, and setup and config, and obviously use specific ports to be able to communicate across that tunnel. They can be like listening or polling tentacles. So that means they can either say to the Octopus server, have you got anything for me? Have you got anything for me? Or you can have tentacles which are basically just listening constantly, and the server itself pushes the packages out and deploys. And there's even offline mode as well, where you can package up your whole deployment, including all the things to run that process, and deploy it kind of offline onto the server. So it basically is tailored around how your corporate IT policy or your client's IT policy allows you to be, or whether you're actually, as developers, in charge of it yourselves, or is the company in charge of it yourselves. Right. So obviously you'd have maybe where you're not allowed to open certain ports, or have our server directly talking to your server. You'd rather that it ask the server. So there's different firewall configuration, I guess. So it's kind of tailored around that.
Right. So there's a few terms in there that people might not be aware of or know exactly what they are. And I think that the most standout one in that is tentacle. Now, is it a server? Is it a web service or something on a server? What exactly is a tentacle?
Yes, it's a Windows service that you actually install on the server where you're going to deploy your code to. So you can have multiple ones of them depending on what environment, how big your environment is. So say if you take a very simple web server, for instance, you just have one tentacle on there. You'd set it up with the server's certificate thumbprint, and then you tell the Octopus Deploy server, the one where the actual main Octopus Deploy application is installed, you tell it what the fingerprint of the certificate on the server where the tentacle is, so and the port to communicate, and you'd have to open those ports up on the web server that you're deploying to. So you want to deploy on port, I don't know, 8080 or 9090 or something like that. You'd open that up and then tell the server go and talk to it on this port and use this fingerprint, and it will talk to you, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. And can you have multiple tentacles on a single physical server, or do they all have to sit on their own instance?
You probably wouldn't need multiple tentacles because you can deploy whatever you want down those tentacles, so you can deploy multiple different packages. Because when you're setting up your configuration on Octopus Deploy to say I want to deploy this application, you set up a number of deployment steps to maybe create an IIS website or install a Windows service. So say you're deploying multiple websites to that server, you'd probably just use the same tentacle, but have several what Octopus Deploy call projects, which kind of encapsulates an application deployment, and have those steps point to and set up the right IIS site or right Windows service to install.
Right. Okay. The other term that you said was it an SSL tunnel?
Yeah, so it uses HTTPS and just an SSL tunnel between the two servers, in effect, by certificate handshaking with the fingerprint of the relevant certificates.
Right. So the communication between your Octopus Deploy server and your tentacles is all encrypted in it and secure then?
Yes. Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
So nobody can well, you're trying to make sure nobody can intercept that and make it as secure as possible.
Sure. So Octopus deploys my packages, and that's your built software, your built websites, and that sends them up to the server, the tentacle, in the cloud or wherever it is. Does Octopus actually build my software for me from Git or Subversion or Mercurial or whatever version control I've got it sat in?
It doesn't, no. What it does is just deal with the packages which are the result of a build on a dedicated build server. So like NuGet packages essentially is what it uses. Octopus themselves have admitted that they say it lets build servers do what they do best, and it does what it does best, which is configure and release software to kind of different servers and different environments. So you can get it to not just deploy to a specific server, you can actually deploy to cloud apps at Azure. I think someone's generated one to be able to deploy to AWS as well, and possibly the Google one, but I don't know about Google. I'm not 100% sure. I've not checked the libraries and marketplaces for Octopus in the last few weeks.
So it's got some sort of templating engine, has it, so that you can integrate with these different services that are out there, like you said, Amazon and Azure and things like that. Yeah,
so they've generated a load themselves, Octopus, but also they take on contributions as well, from what I've seen. Like I said, there's a library, a library of these things that you can just pull in and use.
Right, and that
hopefully
comes
the
in,
hard work's done.
Yeah. So that comes in through a store or something like that within the installation, does it?
Yeah. So once you've installed your Octopus Deploy server, you use the web interface. You can actually go through one of the menus, and you can get directly to it, or you can go to the library through a web URL. It's like library.octopusdeploy.com.
Okay. Cool. So Octopus Deploy is, as it says in the name, it's just deploy stuff. And then you still need your own build server. So I guess you link it in with the likes of Jenkins and TeamCity or VSTS or whatever to take the artifacts that they produce and then push it out. Is it sort of event driven, or is it a manual poll, or how does it know when your build server has built?
Okay, yep. So yeah, there's loads of extensions, like you say, James, to integrate with TeamCity, Visual Studio Online, or VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, I think they're calling it now, and Jenkins. So yeah, basically what you can do, or one of the examples we've done at work is in the marketplace, there's one that integrates directly with VSTS. So you install the little plugin into your Visual Studio Online kind of build service, and say that you're going to deploy NuGet packages. Eventually, you're going to build and deploy NuGet packages to an Octopus server, and you give it the Octopus server that you want to push it to, and you give it an API key, which you can get from your Octopus server. One of the menus in there allows you to generate API keys, so you can have multiple things pushing packages up to your Octopus Deploy and using its own NuGet feed itself, or you can actually configure it. If you build to say something like MyGet, you can get it to pull packages in from MyGet as well. And again, you just need to provide the credentials for the Octopus Deploy server to receive those, basically.
Right. So your build server is pushing those artifacts through to Octopus. It's not Octopus picking them up when it's built, sort of thing.
No, apart from the MyGet stuff, I think you can get it to listen to MyGet, but we've not tried that.
Right.
So you probably need to check that.
Yeah.
The other way you can do it, well, previously to this little plugin coming out, before that existed, because we started using Octopus Deploy at work about 2 years ago, I'd say, you could get a little executable which you installed as a NuGet package in each project in your solution that you wanted to make a NuGet package out, called Octopack.
Right.
And then you give it you could communicate with it in your MS build to give it some command line arguments to say, I want to push here with this API key. But now they seem to have streamlined that down now to this little plugin that integrates directly with the build services at Visual Studio Team Services. I can't speak for Team City and Jenkins, because I've not really used those too much, but I would imagine if they've done it for that one, possibly try to streamline it for the others as well.
Yeah. I've had a play around with Team City and used it a few times, and it does have a similar sounding plugin architecture, so I would imagine that there's something there for that, with it being one of the big ones. Jenkins, I haven't really done anything with at all. It's being a .NET developer, I think it's more of a Java-based build system.
Yeah, I mean, you could really, if you really wanted to. Octopus Deploy has got an API that you can poke and push things and set things up via, so I'm pretty sure you could probably try and send something over using that API if you really wanted to script it yourself.
Yeah, so
it seems like they've done the hard work for you.
Yeah. So if you're still using cruisecontrol.net or something like that, you can go and write your own batch file to go and push something through Octopus Deploy for yourself.
Yeah, maybe. Get yourself out with that one.
Yeah. I don't think that's something I'd like to get involved with. It was always a nightmare setting up cruisecontrol.net with all its XML files. Yeah. It's so Octopus Deploy, we mentioned there that it works with Team City and Visual Studio Online or VSTS. Is it primarily .NET platform? Does it support any other technologies, or is it just the .NET platform?
Yeah, it's just .NET. So although that's getting bigger, obviously, with the new core stuff coming in, it is just a .NET platform. So it's built in C# and PowerShell itself.
Right.
So I guess they're kind of specialists in that area.
Sure. But it deploys both .NET standard installations and .NET Core then?
Yeah, I've not tried the core stuff, but I've subscribed to like a weekly newsletter, and I've seen some core stuff on there, but I've not investigated it. As in, them announcing that the support's there now. But
sure.
Yeah, we're still on the standard framework ourselves at work, and I've not got any private projects to play around with it at the moment. Core.
Yeah, I think it's always an issue that with your own little projects, and that is building it and setting up a build server and a deployment server, and it always seems a little bit overkill when it's a little pocket project for yourself.
Yeah, it's nice when you've got it humming along. It saves you time, but yeah, it's that initial sprint zero stuff or something that you might call it at work that you get time for, but sometimes you just want to get something out there when you're trying to do a little pet project, and so you don't want to invest that time.
Yeah. I set up Team City for one of my open source projects, got that building, got that producing a NuGet package and pushing it into NuGet.org. And it was really good. And I was like, oh, it works, fantastic. But it's really irritating because whenever I check in now into master, it goes and builds and releases a new NuGet package. But I just haven't had the time to go and actually take that automation off so that it only pushes it up to NuGet when I want it to. Because if I'm going through and just changing one or two lines of code, I don't really want it to release another version of the software.
Yeah.
So there's only really me playing around with it, and I haven't touched it for a little while, so I don't think anybody's complaining about it too much.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we touched on plugin frameworks that are within Octopus Deploy. So we just go over those again. There's an API for integration into your different build servers, and also some sort of plugin framework for deploying to different environments like AWS and Azure, and a normal dedicated server, I guess. Is there anything else there that we can play with and tap into?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've covered those ones off, obviously, but there is some stuff in there. There's a library of kind of, like I've mentioned very briefly, the way that you'd set up like a deployment project in Octopus. You set up a series of steps, deployment steps. So either create an IIS site, install this Windows service, run this post-deploy script, and you can either give it some C# to run, or you can give it some PowerShell to run, or I think you might even be able to give it a bash script to run. And you can either reference it and it's part of your NuGet package and say it's in the NuGet package to run it and just give it the name, or you can actually, there's a code editor, you can actually type the code in there yourself, like the PowerShell or bash or whatever you want.
Right.
But some people have kind of encapsulated those common steps, although it comes out of the box with loads of ones like the IIS ones and things like that. Some people have encapsulated kind of restarting IIS services and common steps into like a little library as well, and you can just pull those in as well, so you don't have to write them yourselves if you don't want to.
Sure. So there's quite a big community out there around it building these add-ons. So, so you don't have to go through the heartache and the trauma of writing your own.
Yeah. There's if you subscribe to the newsletter as well with the or the updates for Octopus, quite regularly they do like a webinar as well, and they get somebody who's using Octopus quite a lot in their own organisation, and normally the other person is somebody from Octopus, and they talk through some of the stuff they've been doing and contributing back. Those webinars are really kind of handy because they actually take usually about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, and step through using screen share how to set this up from end to end. So I watched one using VSTS, so writing an application, setting it up to build in VSTS, and getting it up to Octopus and deploying it through Octopus to an IIS. Oh, it was a cloud service, I think, not an actual IIS site on a server. And they did all that in about 45 minutes, as well as talking around the subject. So although it's 3/4 of an hour, but they were talking around it, you can see you can fairly quickly get up and running on these things. I mean, they had installed Octopus already themselves. They just installed the tentacle while you were watching the webinar.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, these guys are doing all these common kind of steps and things like that because they're probably sick of writing the same steps themselves. So they've just thought, right, I'm going to write one of these, and just you can pull it in as a template. Yeah,
and I guess you chain them together in some fashion.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah. You chain them together, and then there's like a drag and drop UI inside Octopus when you're on there to be able to reorder them if you want something to run before something else. Or run last or whatever. So there's some Slack integration you can do as well to say whether it's deployed. So we use that at work.
Okay. So
we know what's deployed to what server. I think there's some other integration as well. I'm trying to think of the other Slack like IM stuff. I can't remember the other ones. There is another one as well. I can't remember off the top of my head now.
Yeah. Is it the one that Microsoft built and it looked like Facebook and it was awful?
I don't think. I don't think.
Can't
I
think
don't
what
think.
that's called.
Yeah, although they're .NET, they don't seem to be Microsoft.
Right.
They do seem to, when I've watched the
Yeah.
webinars.
If you think about it, we can stick the links to that
Yeah,
in the show notes so that anybody can go and have a look at that. So I've got my build server. It's building my application, and it can push it out there already. It can already do the deployments. So why should I bother with Octopus? What are the benefits of using Octopus over just using the build server that I've got and saying we'll build it to this directory over a like file share, or maybe it runs a batch script or a PowerShell script and it does some FTP in or something like that?
Basically, some of these steps, like I've said, are already built for you. So potentially, if you're coming onto a new project and you've got nothing, you've not written any of these scripts before, there's loads of stuff you can get up and running fairly quickly. There's also the ability to kind of centralize all of this deployment and config rather than having it in this script calls that script and this calls a nested script to do this and borrowing a script from somewhere else, which I've seen in the past. As well as that, Octopus also does config transform itself. So it'll transform your web config for you based on the environment that you're going to. So you can set up variables in Octopus, and it just does a kind of key recognition. So you set up the Octopus variable with the name of your web config setting and the value you want it to be, and you can tag which environment that value is valid for that particular key, and it will just transform your web config for you, and you don't even have to think about it.
Right.
You can set up kind of common variable sets. So say you've got sets of variables which are used across several applications. So maybe you've got some kind of central event store or something, or some kind of event-driven thing, and you want to be able to and that's on a separate server, and both the web server and maybe something else, a couple of web applications need to know where that is to get data or to post events to it. So on both those individual deployment projects, you would say use this variable set, and then in both web configs you'd have the reference to those variables that are defined in that variable set, and it will just replace them both. And if you change one of the settings, you can change it once and not have to go into both projects to change it. So potentially you could change where that's sat, say on, I don't know, a dev or a smoke or something, like a test environment, and then change one and not the other and forget. Or you can use a variable set and just change it in one place. So it gives you that advantage. We've also used it for, we've got quite a lot of JSON config for some of our stuff at work as well. So we've used it for JSON transformations as well to basically do substitution on those variables using the Octopus variables, like to transform JSON files, which is pretty handy as well, rather than having to write some kind of thing to do it yourself.
Yeah. So it's a bit like the web config transformation that you get in Visual Studio and through MS Build, but with the benefit of that you're building this once, and then it's the deployment stage that changes those variables. Because I think if you were doing it through a normal route through just a build server, you would have to build it once with your settings for your test server, once with your settings for your live server, and once with your settings for your staging. And technically, they're all three separate builds that you're actually testing.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily want that. You want the ability to be able to deploy the same package. So you push it on a dev environment or a test environment, and somebody signs it off and say, right, I want that in production now, or on a UAT or something like that. You move the same packages, the same binaries, because you know that they passed. So you move those up, and it does the config transforms on the fly for you there.
That stops you getting any rogue commits going in and being built in between testing and when it goes live.
So there's a good dashboard on the front so you can see what version of what is where, so you can version your releases as well. And it's basically, once you've got everything set up. So you tell it these servers are in the dev environment, these servers are in the smoke environment, these servers are in the live environment. You can set up what they call life cycles, which include those environments in them. So perhaps you'd have a life cycle where you had to deploy to dev first, then to smoke, and then to, say, live or something when it's signed off. You may have another life cycle where you want to shortcut something somewhere and just get something to test or something to live, and you can choose at the time that you're deploying which life cycle to use, basically, and tell which projects are allowed to use which life cycles. So you've got that flexibility for where you're deploying as well.
So is there a price tag to Octopus? Is it going to cost me a fortune if I wanted to implement this?
Well, with everything that's good and helps save you time, there is there's always a price tag. So it's a kind of, it depends how many projects you're doing, how many target machines, so how many machines have got tentacles on them that you're telling the Octopus Deploy server, the central one, to target. So there's a community version, and that allows you, at the moment, as of a couple of days ago, I checked it on the Octopus Deploy website. It allows you 5 projects with 10 target machines. So that would be 5 individual applications or groups of applications or Windows services, or depends whatever you're deploying on 10 different servers. So say your environments have got 5 servers in them, you've got 2 environments you can deploy to for nothing. That's free, the community version. You just need to register an email address with Octopus Deploy to get that. So then you've got another set of options going up. I think there's about another 4 tiers to it, going up and up. It range from a few $100s all the way up to thousands of dollars. But thousands of dollars, I'm thinking you're going to be, you're talking kind of mega corporation scale. So
hundreds of servers.
Something like Twitter or that kind of thing, or Google Groups, or something where you want massive resilience and stuff like that. So I think we've got 5 environments. So we've got 2 dev, a smoke, a UAT, and a live with the current client we're working with, and there's 4 servers in each, and we're on a couple of $100 for that license.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not free, but it's not mega expensive, and it does scale. So as you get bigger, obviously, you're hoping that if you're deploying lots of apps to lots of servers and things like that, then you're hoping that you're making a fair amount of money, so you can afford that little jump in licensing fee.
Yeah, sure. So there is a free version, which is great, but then once you start getting serious with it, it's not that cheap. But if you get into that point, you really need to be looking at your revenue model on the application you're building and making it pay for itself. Really.
Yeah. In my opinion, though, the hours that you save with it and the ease with being able to just say, the client or whoever, the project manager or whoever's in charge of maybe removing the release from, I don't know, from dev to test, or test to a UAT or a production environment, who's ever in charge of that, the ease with which you can just say, I'm going to do that release, and it'll take me, one click and a few minutes, and bang, it's up there. And you can also roll back quite quickly because you just deploy the last stable release that you know about, so you can go back and roll back by clicking on a previous release. And you know that one was stable, and it basically will tear everything down and redeploy everything and repoint all your say your IS site if you're using IS, or uninstall the Windows service and install the previous one in its place, right, and stuff.
Okay, so it's got the automatic rollback and stuff in there. So that's
really good. We have speculated about giving QA access to be able to make that decision to pull packages into the QA environment. I've seen that done in a previous company. I consulted at, where basically the devs were in charge up to deploying into their dev environments and things like that, but QA pulled the builds in themselves when they were ready to test it. So you can put release notes on the releases, and obviously, like I said, there's version number on the releases as well, so they can make that decision. You could even, if you were really, really daring and you trusted the people you work with, your project managers or your business analysts or whatever, you could say, yeah, the QA could say, right, I've signed that off in QA, and somebody could just make that one click. A manager somewhere, and on a Friday at 5 o'clock.
Oh God, no! Cold sweats, no.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. You could do if you wanted to, because you can set up. There's a permissions model in there, so you can give certain users access to do certain things. So you could have QA you're logging in and only able to move to these environments and set things up on these environments. Dev maybe only up to a point if you wanted, or all of it. There's like that flexible permission model built into it as well.
Yeah, I can see how that could be really beneficial. I know that I worked with a team quite a while ago now, and the QA people, once they'd signed off and they said they were happy with it, is that they would do the deployment, but they would also deploy to their own QA environments as well. So we would literally just check into our version control. The build server would build, it would deploy it to all the to our test environments, and then we could say to one of the QA guys or girls that was in the team, it's now ready, you can take it, and they could build it from our build server and push it onto whatever environment they wanted. But this makes it a lot simpler. So that's good. What would you say was the best feature for you of Octopus Deploy that makes you really an advocate for it?
The best feature is probably just the level of confidence that it gives you, because like I said, you got that dashboard, you got that view of what's where, what's deployed where, and the ability to roll back if something goes wrong. It just inspires a level of confidence once you start working with it and once you get the relevant projects configured. I think we were pleasantly surprised. I think when we first started looking at it a couple of years ago, we wanted to use it because it was fairly new and shiny to us, and
sure,
developers always love that. But using it more and more and putting more and more into it, I mean, we've got it backing up itself at the moment as well, so you can have a locally installed tentacle. Because there's obviously a lot of config going into this server. There's a lot of business value going into this server that's deploying your things and knows where everything is and has all your build steps. Your deployment steps set up. So we've got a locally installed tentacle backing up itself, and it pushes all that JSON config out through a step onto a drive which is off box basically. So.
Right. That's pretty cool. I know I previously had config set up for a build server, which was also stored in the version control. So the build server would actually rebuild its own configuration when you changed it and sort of redeploy itself. And everything was versioned. That when you've got everything knitted together like that, I think it's really good, because if you lose one of those boxes, it's not the end of the world when you've got stuff like that backed up and in version control. You just click another button and away you go. You've got a new instance set up and you're deploying again.
Yeah, you can export and import the config quite well. So if something went wrong and the server that thing sits on just screwed up, and we've been backing it up every day, we're probably not going to lose anything. We've got all of that config. Yeah. Get a new server spun up, probably in the cloud or wherever. Install Octopus Deploy clean, and then just fire the config at it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've tested that. There's no point in backing it up and not testing the restore. We've tested that.
Well,
it's pretty slick.
You can have all the backups and everything that you want in the world, but if you don't ever test your recovery plan, how do you know it's ever going to work?
Yeah, exactly. So we tested that.
Yeah. So in the rollback, it can roll back the server to the state that it was at before. Does it deal with the database side of it, or is that still a manual step?
It depends whether you've got it can run database migrations. We've got it running database migrations through the particular set of projects we're working on. So it can communicate. That is down to you writing those migrations yourself. It basically just executes. If you've got a thing that does the migrations, it just executes that for you, and you can pass like command line parameters to it.
Right.
But it won't directly say talk to a SQL server itself.
Okay. Cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. It's always the sort of the part of the process that I always come a little bit unstuck on, is that I've set up a few different environments over the years like this that they've got rollback in and stuff like that, but then it comes to the SQL side of it, and it's like, and it's always, well, how do we version all our SQL scripts?
Yeah, that is
how do we manage it?
To you a bit.
Yeah, how do you roll it back a bit if there's a problem? And then if we've been live for a little bit and we've changed the schema and we need to roll it back, how do we make sure we don't lose all that customer data? And I'm not a database guy. I'll hold my hands up straight away all the time for that. I'm not the database person, but I always fall down on that. So anything that can help is always handy.
Yeah, you kind of need to put a bit of effort in yourself there. But yeah, as for the application itself and its settings, and any scripts to kind of like pre or post deploy of it, it can do those for you.
Awesome. I'm all out of questions. I think you've covered this off pretty well for us. I've definitely got something out of this, and I hope that the listeners have as well. So thanks for coming on and talking to us about Octopus Deploy.
No problem, James. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem. So thanks very much. You've been listening to The Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and you've been listening to Chris Hay talking about Octopus Deploy. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform and help The Cynical Developer to grow by increasing its audience. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website, where you can find all the resource links and show notes for each episode.